Welcome to another episode of My Best 11 podcast. Today we are joined by a fan of what I believe, Mark believes, the greatest club to ever be formed in the world, bar none. So probably I would say the most well-known fan of Luton Town Football Club, especially back in the UK. And we'll get into a bit more about what he does a bit later on, but he has been the figurehead of the revival of Luton in terms of the face of it, alongside Gary Sweet. So we are very lucky to have on today a TV presenter, a radio host, and somebody who, up until now, he's also been credited with being on James Bond, I saw earlier as well. So we have Nick Owen on. How are you, Nick?
Yeah, hello, Andrew. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Delighted to be doing this, but it's a very difficult job, I tell you, picking your best 11.
Yeah, it's something which a lot of our fans have found. I'll maybe say it's a bit easier probably for fans because they can't offend anybody. But I suppose with you having so much close contact with the players even today, are you a bit worried about offending anybody who you've left out? I mean, Marv, I assume, isn't in the team.
Stop, Andrew! I'm not even. If I get in Nick's 11, right, there's some conspiracy going on. It's an absolute joke if I get in his 11, and I'm not having.
I wouldn't want to embarrass you, Marvin. So I've kept you out of it.
Thank you, Nick.
Hello,
anyway, Nick.
Violet.
And yes, Marv, how are you?
Yes, I'm great. I mean, I'm really excited to hear about Nick's 11 because, I mean, he's one of our most famous supporters in my eyes. I mean, I watched him on TV in Good Morning Anna Nick and stuff like that, and I was a little bit in awe when I met him, apparently, because obviously, like I said, he was on the TV, and I mean, I'm just the little old Marv who plays for Luton, but little did I know that Nick was a big Luton fan, and I was a big fan of the club.
Excellent. So I'm sure we'll get into some stories as we go on and how you met and the first time were your knees trembling, Marv. We'll get into that a bit later. But so for those people who haven't listened to the podcast before, we may have some new listeners. What we do is we go through Nick's best 11 team. We start off with the formation and then we finish off with the manager, the person he thinks is the best manager he's seen. And of course, this is down to his own interpretation. So it's down to the way that he has believed that the players may be jealous as an 11, or he may have just picked square pegs in round holes and picked the best strikers. So we'll find out in a minute. So formation-wise, Nick, what do you think the formation, or what formation do you prefer to see, or what formation do you think Luton have always played best in?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think 4-3-3 is pretty decent these days, and I accept that as the one they mostly play, really. Although Luton have used this diamond midfield thing, which seems to have worked over the last few years. But I've always loved originally a sort of flexible 4-2-4, and I know no one would dream of using that these days. But the players I've selected, because they're all mostly attacking players, they've got to fit into a 4-2-4, and I reckon that it'll be very entertaining to watch. And if we win a game, it'll be something like 6-5, because we haven't got much in the way of defensive midfielders. So I'm picking players that to me are really special for one reason or another. And I have slightly put them in, round pegs and square holes and things. But I think it would work. But I certainly think it's a very exciting team just because I love them all. But anyone who's worn a Luton shirt is special to me, and I really mean that. Anyone in the 62 years I've been watching the club, anyone who's pulled on a Luton shirt, including Marvin Johnson, are very special to me.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. I'm honoured.
Awesome. So we'll get going then. Let's start off by looking at we'll start off with goalkeeper, and then from there we'll let you run through the team in your order.
Okay, well, I mean, the first thing I wanted to do was try and reflect the years I've been watching the club and try and sort of put in players who represented the club in the very earliest days when I went and most recently. And the goalkeeper, in fact, was quite easy because this guy was the goalkeeper when I first started watching Luton Town. And he was a big name in football at the time. He'd played for England a few times. and he was a real stalwart in goal for Luton Town, and he was one of my very first heroes. I mean, all 11 of the first game I ever went to are heroes, because it's such a special moment when you first walk into Kenilworth Road. And this guy, I mean, he's still alive, bless him, and I was absolutely thrilled to meet him about a year or so ago in the Eric Morecambe Lounge at Luton. He's 91 I think now, and he's one of a few survivors from the team that played in the FA Cup final in 1959, and I was like a schoolboy meeting him. It was so special.
Unbelievable. I didn't even know that.
Brilliant.
He played for England, Nick. He played for England, you said?
Yeah, he played 3 or 4 times for England, and he played something like 388 times for Luton Town FC. So he's a bit special.
I mean,
are you going to get him?
No, I'm not. I'm not even going to attempt. I mean, I'm a bit jealous now, because I mean, like you said, he played in the cup final, and
yeah,
I mean, that would have been great.
Yeah, well, can I reveal his name?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, yeah,
anyone of my age group and a bit younger will know who it is. It's Ron Bainham, Baynham. And as I say, he was in goal from the mid-50s to the early 60s for Luton, and he was all part of establishing them in the first division, the old first division top flight, and getting into the FA Cup final in 1959, which they lost sadly to Nottingham Forest, and really didn't play as well. I was in tears afterwards. I was absolutely inconsolable, aged about sort of 11 or 12. I wore my rosettes and badges all day. Didn't get to the final. No, I didn't get there. But I watched it second half on telly. I was away at boarding school, so I couldn't go. But I played cricket that day at school, because it was May, so it's the beginning of the summer term. Played cricket, but the headmaster saw me come into classes that morning with all my badges and rosettes. In those days, you buy little badges with pictures of Luton players on and rosettes, and I wore that in school all day. And he said, "Oh, no, you're a big Luton fan." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, you can come to my house and watch the second half after cricket." So I watched the second half, by which time we were 2 down. But we lost 2-1 in the end. And you must have heard that the Nottingham Forest winger Roy Dwight broke his leg. Yeah, does that ring a bell?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was him, or I thought it was the goalkeeper or someone got hurt or broke.
No, Roy Dwight, in a collision with our right back Brendan McNally, broke his leg and had to go off. And Brendan McNally actually broke his foot, but he carried on. So it was, officially 11 against 10, but I thought we were 10 and a half, because Brendan McNally must have been struggling with a broken foot. And Roy Dwight, of course, is the cousin or uncle of Elton John, whose real name is Reg Dwight. I don't know whether you know all that or not, but it's sort of...
There's some nice trivia there, thank you.
Yeah, but anyway, Ron Bainham was an absolute hero. I remember I used to buy loads of football magazines and annuals when I was a lad, and I was so jealous in one, because there was a great big article about a young lad who won a competition to go to Kenilworth Road and spend the day with Ron Bainham, and there's pictures of him sitting in the dressing room and out on the field and shooting at Ron and all that. I was just so jealous when I was about 10 or 11 years old. It's funny how you remember things like that so clearly, it's over 60 years. So Ron Bainham was amongst my first absolute heroes, and he's still alive, one of the very few of that team, and I was absolutely thrilled to meet him a couple of years ago, and I've got his picture on my phone as well. Brilliant.
That's fantastic. So Nick, so your first ever game at Kenilworth Road, who was that? Do you remember the game? Who were playing? Luton versus who?
It was Leeds United, Luton v Leeds, in the old top flight, September the 3rd, 1958, roughly. I think it was the
crowd.
It would be in the teens, 18,000, something like that. I can't remember that exactly. I just didn't have time to count them because I was watching the game, But we drew 1-1, and just walking into the ground, a professional football ground for the first time, is spectacular, whether it's Old Trafford, White Hart Lane, or in our case, Kenilworth Road. It is just jaw-dropping. For me, the grass was so incredibly vibrantly green, and the goals with nets on, I didn't play football with nets on in those days. So to actually see it all there, and of course you didn't see much football on telly. The only one game a year on telly was the FA Cup final, and that was in white, so you didn't quite get the feel when you suddenly walked in, and all the pictures in the papers were all black and white. So when you actually walked in for real and saw all the colours, it was just stunning, and it was such a thrill, and it stayed with me to this day. We drew 1-1. Our goal was scored by Alan Brown, who went on to manage the club in the 60s, but at the time he was our centre forward, and he scored at the far post at the Oak Road end from a cross by Jimmy Adam, who crossed roughly from where the tunnel is. I can still see it now, and the crowd erupting and me looking around. It's just so exciting. Yeah, so that was my first game, and well, I started earlier in the year following the club. And do you know what sparked my interest?
Well,
I mean, obviously they're my local club, but I liked playing football and things at school as a little boy, but I never got engaged by the professional game. And then the terrible Munich air crash happened, the Manchester United crash, on February the 6th, 1958. And so suddenly professional football, top flight football, big clubs was all the focus. And everyone's saying, oh gosh, I support Manchester United. Oh, I support Arsenal. And they're all saying these things. And I thought, well, who am I going to support? And I thought, well, my dad goes to Luton every week. I'm going to support Luton because they were the local club. It was between Luton and Watford, actually, about equidistant, 13 miles where I Berkhamsted
stop
in
swearing.
Sorry, I'm not allowed. You can bleep that out, can't you?
Yeah.
And so I started supporting Luton roughly February 1958 and went to my first game in September. And I was hooked before I went and doubly hooked afterwards, and it's never changed.
Yeah, I go. Yeah, I call them the yellow team. That team you just mentioned on air. I don't like their name being said. It's the yellow team. We call them.
Yeah, well, lots of my friends support them because we were equidistant. You see, lots of my friends support Luton, but lots of them supported Watford as well. Sorry, that yellow team.
Again, oh my, hurts.
We need a delay on this interview so you can cut it out before I say it.
So whereabouts do you sit then? Did you used to sit? Obviously nowadays you sit in other places. Where in that first game you mentioned the Oak Road. I know everybody has their stand. I've always preferred the Kenilworth. I don't know why. I've always grown up preferring behind the goal rather than the side. Where's yours, Nick?
Well, my first ever game was in the main stand because I was only little. You see, I was only 10, so standing was out of the question really. And my father took me, to a seat roughly above where the tunnel is now. But then as I got a bit older, it was the Oak Road for me. I loved going behind the goal on the Oak Road. But when things were really bad, I mean, we're talking now about top flight football. When things got really bad and we plummeted ultimately into the 4th division, I used to go to a game and decide where I was going to be, whether it was in the Bobbers stand, standing there, or behind the Kenilworth goal, Kenilworth Road goal, or the Oak Road goal. But if, I was up behind the Kenilworth Road goal and we were attacking that in the first half, we were allowed to move to go to the other end to watch them attacking the Oak Road goal. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know you could swap.
Young lads, we'd walk along the touchline at half time and get into the Oak Road end and watch the game from there. So we watched the game from both ends where we were attacking. No
wonder you picked a 4-2-4 formation. You've only ever been bothered about
strikers. All about goals. I've never seen the defence. But that is true, yeah. So I mean, I've got really, really sort of warm emotional ties to the Oak Road in days gone by because that was just where it seemed to me it all happened. All the singing started. I used to love being in the middle of that. Da 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 da. We're gonna win Division 4. Da 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 da. Things like that, and give us an L. Oh, just fantastic days being a youngster. And then, when I went to university, I used to travel all over the place. I was at Leeds University. So I used to hitch off to obscure places like Hartlepool and Stockport and stuff like that when we were in the 4th division. Those were pretty grim years. I mean, I know we had some very grim years later, but in the mid-60s, by which time, I was sort of able to do my own thing and go to games. I was going to loads of games on my own and then meeting up with Luton fans at places like Notts County or wherever it was,
Excellent.
Fantastic. So we digress anyway. This is supposed to be our best 11. So let's so go along the defence. On the right hand side, who have you got?
Yeah,
on the right
all right then. Yeah, the back four now then.
Sorry, Nick, but obviously you've been a supporter for quite a while. You can give some honourable mentions to some people if they didn't quite make your team and you thought about maybe.
I was going to do sort of big list of potential subs afterwards, people who I nearly picked. But anyway, it'll crop up as it goes along. I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about right back now, shall we? And again, I mentioned earlier that I want to cover the generations and going from my very earliest memories to more recent ones. The guy I put at right back is someone who is turning into a fantastic footballer in the Premier League. I'm sure you're going to get it immediately. But I, along with every other Luton fan, are so proud of what he's done. I mean, I think he joined us when he was about 8 years old and came through the ranks and stuck with the club when he could easily have been poached, I would have thought, away through his teens, like so many players did over the years. But he stuck with us, and then at the right time, he moved to a Premier League club. And, you know, he's already played for the under-21s England, and there's talking of him playing for England full team fairly soon. Can't believe he won't. And I'm just so proud that his background is Luton Town, and he clearly thinks a lot of our club. He must do. He's a Luton lad, isn't he? And go on. Who is it, Marv?
James Justin.
James Justin, absolutely. I mean, what a player he's turning.
Yeah.
And I mean, he had to establish himself, first of all, in the first team squad at Leicester, but now he does seem to have done that. And I would have thought, because he's so reliable and such a good character, besides being a talented footballer, that he must be one of the first names down on the list. And every time I watch Leicester, I have that real glow of pride. He was fantastic for us in the few years he played in our first team as part of, you know, some very successful times. So without question, for me, the right back has to be James Justin.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, go on, Nick.
Sorry,
Andrew. No, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, it's James Justin, I think, in terms, you talk about character. I liken James Justin's character to somebody who's really got a bit of grit, somebody who can drive their way through. Because there was a long time when he was out of the team, when he was being kept out. I remember we had Dan Potts at left back and Jane and Stacey at right back. And it was actually unfortunate for Potts, broke his leg or something, quite a serious injury. And Justin actually made his name almost for Luton at left back because Stacey had the right back slot. So he actually had to sit on the bench for a good part of the season, even though he'd broken through to the first team. Then a newbie came in. So, and then the season later, he got his launch. So I think that it shows his tenacity. It shows his real work ethic rather than toys out the pram, like a lot of young players these days.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've had some terrific right backs. I mean, Tim Breaker was a fantastic player, wasn't he, Marv? You must have played with him a few times, didn't you? I mean, he was a excellent player, and bearing in mind, you know, he's part of the team that got to the League Cup final and won it and so on. He had to have a shout to be in my team, and could easily on any other day be in. But I think James Justin has the ability to become that little bit more successful, that little bit more gifted. But Tim Breaker was terrific. And Kirk Stevens, I loved him because of his image and his whole psyche. You know, he was just so passionate. See him quite often, I'm sure you don't you? And he's a great lad.
He was a great lad. And Graham Alexander, I mean, would be one of my choices because obviously, I mean, total out and out footballer, which I mean, I love. I mean, I just love obviously people who can just play and handle the ball. But just going back to what Andrew was saying with regards James, is that probably in respect of that, it wasn't necessarily a case where you were a quality defender, you came to the team early. If you're more of a quality striker and you're a young lad, you probably got like come on a sub, and it's not, I mean, I wouldn't say it's a risk, but like it's a point of where they can nick you a goal and there's more chance of being an instant hero and someone who could be on the bench quite a bit and maybe even get into the team and have a bit of a run. Whereas as a defender, you have to be, which obviously James is obviously of an outstanding quality, I think, to break into a first team quite early, above maybe a little couple of seasoned pros, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, I get your point, because you could easily, because of lack of experience, make one little slip and suddenly bang.
Exactly, and it's done.
Yeah, no, I get that, totally, yeah. Right, do you want my centre-half now?
Let's go centre-half.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Again, I mean...
Marvin sits up a bit prouder in his seat. Here he comes. Yeah. Can you notice that, Nick? He's sat up a bit...
well, the centre half, again, you know, could have been quite difficult. Various eras, you know, I mean, for instance, the captain of the Luton side when I first got interested was called Sid Owen, and because his name was Owen, I had a particular interest in him. And he was Footballer of the Year in 1959 with, you know, the Football Writers Association. That's quite something.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Nick. Sorry to interrupt you there. Can I have a guess? Is he Scottish?
Who, the centre half?
Yes.
No. The one I've chosen.
Yes, the one, yes. Oh. No, not Scottish.
No.
So it's not Bruce Rioch then, okay.
Centre half? It would never be centre half, Bruce Rioch.
Not?
Midfield.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
Sorry.
No. Right. Marvin, can I go on now? Yeah, this centre half was captain of the club. Inspirational captain, absolutely amazing, an absolute rock. He played for England as well, 3 times, I think it was, for England. And he played about 163 times for Luton Town. And he was captain in our finest hour. So I'm sure this bloke who used to play for Brighton, I think Portsmouth as well, and Aston Villa, I think you probably know who I'm talking about.
Fozzie.
Go on.
Yeah,
Revealed.
Fozzie.
Yeah. Steve Foster, fantastic player. But, you know, Terry Branston was another who's probably before your time, but he was captain when we started to turn it around again, after we plummeted from the top flight to the 4th division, and we were really in a bad way. And then we started to come back and we won the 4th division in fantastic style. And Terry Branston was a centre half and captain, and he was inspirational as well. It's difficult because, you know, within a team, people can be outstanding, within their division, outstanding. But then you're comparing with someone who's outstanding in the top flight. So it's quite difficult sometimes. I mean, emotionally, I could easily have Terry Branston ahead of Steve Foster. But really, in terms of actual player ability, it has to be Steve Foster, because he did it at the top flight, and he won us a trophy, a major trophy, and he played for England. So Steve Foster, absolute rock at the back, terrific player. And then the guy alongside him, I mean, I had written down Marvin Johnson, but I don't know who he is even. But no, the guy who I have to put, and it's not Mal Donaghy either, who is a terrific player.
That's what I was going to.
I think I've got it. I think I've got it.
Go on.
I'm going to say Butcher.
Yes. Blimey, that is something else. He was a phenomenal footballer. And I'm sure you know the story that, I mean, he was signed for Luton by Harry Haslam, I think it was, early 70s. And he was only a teenager. We bought him from Chester for 100 grand. Phenomenal amount of money in those days for a club such as ours as well. And no one had heard of him. He had no experience at the top level. You know, so it was quite a gamble, but Harry was convinced, obviously, and the people around him. And part of the deal, as you probably know, is his twin brother, Ron Futcher, who came for about 25,000. So the package, 125,000. And these two started to play midway through this season, and we had in the first division, the old first division, when we were struggling. And Paul Futcher came in as a teenager, and he was absolute class. He really was a revelation. And I thought at the time, and I said this for what it's worth, because I'm pretty young myself, that he was the next Bobby Moore, because he was so cool, elegant. Right. His timing was unbelievable. His distribution, everything about him was quite exceptional. He was a really wonderful player. And we sold him ultimately to Manchester City for about 350,000. Sadly, he had 2 terrible car crashes, and they really did hinder his progress in the game. So who knows how long he would have been successful at Man City and the other places he played. He never made the progress or achieved the success his phenomenal ability deserved. And I'm very, very sad to say now he's died age 60, you know, he's no longer with us, but he was an outstanding player and a really exciting player. And his...
Sorry, he's gone.
Nearly saved us from being relegated after that first season in the division. So Paul Futcher, and happy memories too of his brother Ron. I particularly want to mention a game in which they played for us against Wolves round about Christmas time, 1974. And we were bottom of the table. And we played Wolves at home, and because I was working in the Midlands even then, as I am now, and I've sort of moved around a bit, and I was pretty close friends with people like John Richards and Steve Kindon, who played for Wolves, and they got me tickets for the game and everything. And Wolves were a good side, and we beat them 3-2. Paul Futcher was outstanding. Ron Futcher got a hat-trick. It was an amazing day. You know, we started to think, oh, there's a bit of hope here. But anyway, that apart, Paul Futcher has to be my my sort of central defender alongside Steve Foster.
And and that's how I guessed it, because even before my time, how long it was, I heard when I joined, like everyone spoke about Paul Futcher, what an outstanding player he was for Luton. Outstanding, literally, they said.
Yeah,
and so I mean, I had a quite an easy guess. I felt like if it was, you've already named Fozzie, someone who I played alongside and learned so much about the game from. So I mean, Futcher was an easy choice for me, I think, on hearing
Yeah.
about how good he was.
Yeah, yeah. Right, my left back. This is really difficult as well, actually. But I picked someone who was a very exciting player. He didn't play in the top flight for us at all. Played right down in the lower reaches, but he was, you know, clearly going places. We signed him from Oxford, I think, when he was a kid.
Yeah.
He had been rejected by Oxford because they said he was overweight. Is this ringing bells with you, Marvin? And they said he was a bit overweight.
I know
so
exactly who this one is. Yes.
Yeah, we snapped him up, and I think he made his debut for us. He was only about 17, and he was just fantastic. Pace down the left wing, and of course he was, you know, he was a wing back really, not just a left back. And he was part of the team that won promotion from the bottom division, League Two, in about 2002-ish, I say. Outstanding player for me, very exciting, scored some fantastic goals, and ultimately went off to Portsmouth, who were then on the verge of going to the top flight. I think Joe Kinnear, who sold him, said it was daylight robbery or highway robbery. Dick Turpin would have paid more type thing. I think he went for about 600,000 or 800,000, worth a lot more, and had a very successful career. And his name is Andrew
Matthew Taylor.
Matthew Taylor.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe he. No, I can't believe overweight. Was he overweight?
Yeah, I heard. Yeah, it's quite a well-known story. Yeah.
What tails overweight? I mean, I'm hoping. I mean, I've been having conversation with him, hoping to get him on here. Is just like because he's working at Spurs at the moment, and it's difficult to get him on. Yeah, it's at Spurs and in the academy, and so I'll have to say to him about that. Overweight. He's. I mean, oh my gosh, he's like that. Thick.
I know, but he was. But the thing is, you know, when you're a teenager or early, you do have puppy fat and things like that. You do slim down. People are late developers in so many ways, but he was great for us. I do remember at one player awards ceremony, I was standing next to him in the gents. I'm desperately trying to persuade him to stay because, you know, he was being talked about going to lots of different clubs. And there we were, minding our own business, looking forward. Occasionally looked across to him and said, "You've got to stay, Matthew. You love it here. You do so well at Luton." But I didn't succeed. That's the last time I saw him face to face, as it were, in the stand-ups. He's a great. I'll tell you someone else who could have been in that side for me, in my side, is Steve Buckley. Is he before your time as well?
I've heard, I heard it again, another out-and-out footballer. I mean,
he's the brother of Alan Buckley, who's very successful as a striker and manager in his time. But Steve came from non-league football, then Burton Albion, then non-league, and he was put into our side about the same time as the two Futchers, when, you know, we were all looked lost halfway through the season in the first division. And he was a revelation as well. He actually replaced an England player, ex-England player, Bobby Thompson, who was a marvellous footballer as well. He played for us at the end of his career, but he was a very, very skillful, lovely touch footballer. For a fullback somehow, you know, he had the outstanding sort of skills. But Steve Buckley was a bit of a blunderbuss, you know, had a phenomenal left foot. I can remember a thunderbolt goal he scored. I think it was Oxford away. But he was one of the people who came into the team and revolutionised it. And we very nearly stayed up, and we could have done, but we didn't. But anyway, he was a terrific player. He went on to Derby County for a lot of money. I remember Aston Villa were after him for a while because Ron Saunders, the manager then, used to ring me for advice about Steve Buckley and said, "How good is he?" You know, and tell me, you know, what do I say? I don't want to lose him, but on the other hand, I don't want to diss him. So I say he's a very good player, Ron, but, you know, still probably needs a bit more time. But in the end, Derby. So that's my back four anyway. You go along with that? Fantastic. Foster, Butcher and Taylor. Is that all right?
Whoa. Nice amount of attacking, nice amount of old school defending as well, I think, in there. So it's really nice.
Yeah, I mean,
and as you said, mix of generations. And as you said, a mix of generations.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go into midfield. So just two people in the midfield. And well,
what we'll do is Nick, we'll just pause for a second, and then we'll go to an ad break, and then when we come back from an ad, we'll hear about your two midfielders and four attackers. So we're back after this very short break to hear a little bit more about Nick Owen's My Best 11. Fantastic. So we're back for part two with Nick Owen. So far, those people who've got very short memory of about 30 seconds, we've got Ron Bainham, James Justin, Matty Taylor, Steve Foster and Paul Futcher. So let's move on to Nick's gone for a 4-2-4. So let's hear about his two midfielders, two central midfielders. Over to you, Nick, in whichever order you prefer.
Well, one of these is just about the most popular player who's ever turned out for Luton Town. And the other was also highly popular and very successful at lots of other clubs. The first, it's going to be so easy for you to get, obviously. He was a star of the team in the 80s when we had our decade in the old First Division. He was a star in that team that won the League Cup in 1988. He played for England a few times, should have played more. If he'd been with Manchester United or Arsenal, he would have done. And he was just sublimely skillful, a marvellous player, superb touch. And if he was in the team, you always had a chance. Who's it going to be?
Ricky Hill?
Correct. I mean, just a lovely player. I mean, I'm sure you're in touch with him. He spent a lot of time in the States, doesn't he, Marv?
Yes, I mean, again, another one who's going to, I mean, I've been in touch with, he's going to come on, but I said to Andrew the other day, I don't think we've ever had anyone who's played with Ricky not put him in their team, in their 11. I put him in my 11. If everyone's, he's that good a player, Nick, that he goes down on the team sheet, first name. It's on my team sheet, first name. Unbelievable player.
So annoying that he never played more for England. I mean, crikey, with all ability. It's all to do with being at Luton Town, isn't it? It just drives you mad.
100%. 100%.
Why are people who select teams so blind? Why do they only see the big teams, as it were? It's the same in cricket. Cricket selectors in years gone by, anyway, they seem to pick people who played for Surrey, Yorkshire and Middlesex. But anyway, that's another story. So Ricky is an absolute shoe-in, really. I mean, and the goal he scored in the FA Cup semi-final, 1985, wonderful goal. And we murdered Everton that day and lost. It's just still heartbreaking today. And one of my boys, who you know, Marv, Andy, my oldest, that semi-final was his first ever football match. He was about 6. And so it has special memories for me because of that, and particularly for him because it was his first game. And we played so well that day. I remember people like Gary Parker were outstanding that day.
I was just coming into the, when was that? I came into the club in 85. In 85, in summer of 85, and literally we obviously as an apprentice then we went to the game and watched the game, and like you said, played so well, and Ricky's goal was unbelievable. And we should have won. We should have won.
And the Holt End at Villa Park, I think it was all Luton fans, about 20,000 now. Yeah. And we really should have won. Emeka and names like, or of course Mick Harford was playing that. It was just a wonderful team, and it was absolutely gutting not to get to the final. But anyway, Ricky's goal that day was spectacular. And I mean, he played over 400 times for the club. You're not going to get that much these days, are you? Players are not going to play for one club for 400 appearances or more. No. And I think he played for England 3 times. And of course, he was manager for a while. And it's so disappointing because I was so thrilled when he became the manager because of who he was and his background, his closeness to the club. For whatever reason, it didn't seem to work out. Perhaps it was too early in his life, you know.
I mean, I've mentioned it on here that the club was going through a little bit of a transition at the time, Nick, way before I think Ricky came in, and in what he had, in my opinion, to work with, like players wise, or what he was allowed to bring in. We were a really young team, and I mean I didn't help matters that most by being injured for the majority of the time, as per usual again, but which was disappointing because obviously, like I said, I mean, if there's one person obviously you really wanted to make sure that you was going to be available and give 100% for, it would be Ricky Hill, obviously, from my point of view. But yeah, it was. I think it was more of a. He was way ahead of his time, bringing in obviously like.
Was he?
Massively, Nick. I'm telling you now, like he brought in Daley Thompson, right? From the famous Daley Thompson, who was gonna.
Yes, yeah, I remember.
He was gonna be like our fitness coach, and we were doing these certain runs and movements. He was so ahead of his time, Ricky. How he had.
Was he because he had a bit of continental influence? Because he went to the continent, didn't he? Was it that?
He did. And I think it's just, I mean, again, his knowledge of and his experience of playing, like you said, probably abroad, and he brought in Chris Ramsey, who's done
Yeah.
like, I mean, he's been fantastic with since
QPR and
he's
places.
been, yeah, QPR, and he's still, and at Tottenham he's done great things, Chris. So he had Chris, and he knew obviously what he wanted, Ricky, but I just don't think he had obviously the players, or I mean, it was very unlucky that, I mean, like I said, he was so ahead of his time in the way I think how he wanted to do things. It just didn't work out, because I think the club was going through a bit of a transition then.
Yeah, and I think managers do need time. I mean, how many do you get?
Yes.
About 4 months.
I can't remember.
People do panic quickly, don't they?
Yeah.
You've got to stick managers if you can, but who are we to dictate? But that's what I think. But at the time, you know, as a fan, you think, oh gosh, do we need a new manager? Can't Ricky do it and all that? But I so wanted him to do it. I loved the man, still do. Oh, wonderful, wonderful player. Yeah. And they've got a special place in the hearts of my kids, because he was so much part of their early watching of Luton Town. Right, the other midfielder.
Okay, let's go. Have we got another flair player?
Oh, yeah. He was part of the team that won promotion from the 4th Division in 1968. Again, that team which had Terry Branston and a few others, when we were turning the corner, having dropped all the way down from top to bottom, and we were coming back, and we won the 4th Division title in phenomenal style, with then a record number of points, 66 points, when it was only 2 points for a win. And this guy scored something like 24 goals from midfield. 24 goals from midfield. He was just a wonderful player, all action, tough tackler, but he was an attacking midfielder with a stunning left foot. And I've seen him score some brilliant goals from, 30 yards out, as well as brilliant goals when he runs the length of the pitch and beats about 3 people and puts it home round the goalkeeper, We used to say he should play for England. And we used to sing a song calling on Sir Alf Ramsey to pick this boy, and he ended up playing for Scotland and became captain of Scotland. Who am I talking about?
Bruce Rioch?
Yeah.
Bruce Rioch.
Yeah. Bruce Rioch, wonderful, wonderful player for us, and essentially a local lad. I mean, he was born in London, I think, but he grew up in Luton, and he came to Luton as a kid, and he was just fantastic. Came through the various youth schemes there were in those days, and he was a very, very exciting player. As I say, got a thunderbolt shot, and the goal that won us promotion was Halifax away. That was a free kick from about 30 yards. Typical of him. It really was typical of him. And when he, everyone was after him, and Aston Villa signed him in the end. And I was at home in Berkhamsted, and I was going out for a night out with a group of friends. And I was just driving up the road away from our house and went past a local newsagent, and there was a big newspaper sort of headline thing, one of those sort of things written out to encourage you to buy the paper. And it said, Rioch brothers sold to Villa. And I was so upset, I couldn't go out. I went home, stayed in. That's how much it meant to me, and still does, all that sort of thing. He went to Villa for £100,000. A lot of money in the late 60s, a lot of money. And his brother Neil, who I still see occasionally, went for 10,000. He was still in the youth team or the reserves. But Bruce was a wonderful player, played about 140, 50 times for us, was a star at Aston Villa. I mean, he went from us to a lower division in the 3rd division, I think. But he was part of the team that won promotion from the 3rd up to the 2nd, up to the top flight, played in League Cup finals, went on to Derby and Everton and managed Arsenal and Bolton. So he had an illustrious career, but he was a very, very exciting player. So he is part of my 2-man midfield, Bruce Rioch and Ricky Hill. Any Luton fan of any age, my age group particularly, will think that's a very exciting midfield, but they're a bit worried there's only 2 of them.
They complement each other, really, because I don't remember seeing obviously Bruce playing, but like you said, he was a tough tackler, and I think his son Greg came up, was an apprentice at the club. Greg Rioch was Gregor was an apprentice, but he was tough. Like Bruce Rioch was like a bit of a maybe in the Souness mold, like Graham Souness mold.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
That sort of player who would leave one on you. You go for the ball. Don't get me wrong. You go for the ball, but if you so happen to be in the way of that ball as well, you might come off a little bit worse for wear.
Yeah, no, he was a very, very tough player, and very skillful and very quick. I've seen him run the length of the field, running around people and banging it in the net. Great player to watch, and really part of the team that won that 68 promotion, which was the first time for me as a Luton fan I'd experienced success, because when I first started supporting us, we were in the old First Division. We got to the cup final, but lost it. A year later, we were relegated. 2 years later, we were relegated again. About a year or two later, we were relegated once more. So we went from the First Division to Fourth Division from 1960 to 1965. Not great. And then, you know, the relaunch started under manager Alan Brown, ex-player, and Bruce Rioch at the hub of it. So that's my midfield.
68 was the year I was born, Nick.
Which was 68?
Yeah, there was the year I was born.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading it in the papers now. Yeah. Cheers. G&T, old son.
I have to mention...
Bit early for Andrew to have a gin and tonic.
I have to mention, apart from yourself obviously being a big celebrity who supports Luton Town, I do believe you had the honour, well, not only just to meet, but obviously to interview, I believe, a great comedian who was a massive supporter of Luton Town, Mr. Eric Morecambe, I believe.
Oh, God, yeah, the iconic Luton supporter,
Yes.
the most famous Luton supporter of all time and ever will be. Yeah, I mean, he is my hero. He really is. I've got a little statue of him on my mantelpiece in my living room. There's a big statue, as you probably know, on Morecambe seafront. Huge thing, bigger than life size. And the guy who did it did me a miniature version, and I've got it on my mantelpiece.
Really?
Yeah.
How was it? How do you know? How was it? How was it? It was Luton. Why? How come Luton? How come he chose Luton? Do you know that, the story?
Well, yeah. Oh, yes. I mean, he was born in the north. Then he became very successful ultimately as a comedian on television with Ernie Wise, and the family settled in Harpenden. It's as simple as that. 6 miles down the road, and he loved his football. And his son Gary, who I see a lot of now, I'm in contact with all the time, he's a very good friend. Gary got into football and said, "Dad, I want to go to a football match." And he said, "Where should we go?" "Well, Luton Town are at home down the road." And they went and they were hooked. And, you know, a couple of years later, Eric was asked to be on the board as a sort of, you know, a front man, a PR man. And it was wonderful for the image of the club. And it's still, to this day, is wonderful for the image of the club. And if ever you happen to see an old Morecambe and Wise show, you're quite likely to see him standing there with a sort of sign saying Luton FC or whatever.
It's the famous Roman one, isn't it? I think the Roman one is probably the most famous one of all. Yeah.
There was SPQR on one side, Senatus Populus Qui Romanus, turn it round. It says Luton FC. And I seem to remember Glenda Jackson pulled up her dress once and she had a rosette around her sort of thigh. Lots of little things like that. Brilliant, absolutely fantastic, wonderful PR for a club to have someone like that as a sort of, you know, just an iconic ambassador, really. And so, yeah, and yeah, I interviewed him a couple of times, actually, but the one I most remember was on breakfast television, TV-am, about 1984. And we'd actually played West Ham the night before. And so I knew he wasn't at the game. I was just, you know, with the fans on terraces, but I got a programme and handed it to him on the show. I said, "Eric, I know you weren't able to get to the West Ham game last night, so I brought you this programme." He said, "Oh, thanks very much. I'll treasure that." Threw it over his shoulder and it landed on a rubber plant at the back of the set. And it was just a gag a minute. You know, once I was presenting the programme with John Stapleton that day. And at one stage we said to Eric, "It's great to have you here. Can you stay on the sofa for a bit longer?" He said, "Stay? I could marry you." And all this sort of thing. It was just, and we were talking about his children. He said, "How many have?" He said, "I've got 3, but mind you, I left home quite early, so I might have more now." You know, it was just all the time gagging. Right. But it is also very poignant because we talked about his health. He's had a lot of heart trouble over the years. You know, he had a major heart attack in the 1960s, and he had bypass surgery, which is quite pioneering in the late 70s. When he came to us, it was 1984, and he said, "You know, I'm so lucky that I had this pioneering surgery and I still feel as fit as anything." And he looked brilliant. And sadly, 40 days later, he died. That was his last television appearance. So I have such mixed memories of it. I'm proud to have done it. I loved getting to know him a bit. But it's very, very sad because it was his last appearance. You know how old he was when he died? 58. No. I mean, that is nothing. 58. 1984, it's a long time ago, yet he was voted the funniest man of the 20th century, and still I would think get a lot of votes now in the 21st century because Morecambe and Wise shows are on telly all the time and repeats and things, aren't they? Absolute legend to me. I love the man, and I'm a bit of a student of him.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I think he'd approve of most of your players so far. Let's see if he keeps going with approval, do you think?
Yeah. Well, do you want to go to the forward line then?
Yeah, let's go. Let's go.
Right. Well, this first one in the forward line is a real enigma. Again, he's going to be before your time, I fear. But
I think
for
I've got
me,
it though. I
oh
think I've got
God,
it.
keep it quiet, Marvin.
I'm not going to say nothing. I'm not saying nothing.
He's one of the most skillful players I've ever seen in my life. And it's absolute tragedy he didn't play at the very top end because he was that good. John Moore, Luton legend, once told me he was the best footballer he had ever seen, and certainly the best he'd ever played with. And this guy only played for us in the 3rd and 4th divisions. And in September '68, he scored the greatest goal I've ever seen in my life. And I think most Luton fans who were there that day will say it's the best goal they ever saw. It was a really crunch game against Mansfield, who were second in the old 3rd division, and we were top, and we'd only just been promoted. And we were under pressure because Bruce Rioch got sent off in the 3rd minute, played with 10 men for much of the game before Mansfield had someone sent off late on. And this guy, when the game was still in the balance, picked up the ball in his own box at the Oak Road end and proceeded to run the length of the field, round player after player after player. No one could believe it. Everyone was expecting him to lay it off. He kept going, rounded the keeper and thumped it into the net of the Kenilworth Road end. The greatest goal I've ever seen, not televised, therefore there's no record of it. But as I say, anyone who's there that day will probably say it's the best goal they've ever seen. And he is
this a winger?
Yeah.
Is his name, I think I might get it wrong, John Ryan? No?
No. Graham French.
Graham French.
Oh.
You heard of Graham French?
Yes, I've heard of him,
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely wonderful player. I mean, that goal was absolutely breathtaking, jaw-dropping, awesome. Every adjective you can think of. Quite brilliant. I think he took part in 2 promotions for us. And then, you know, at the height of his powers, he got convicted of shooting someone in a pub in Luton and went to prison for 3 years. And so he was never the same again. When he came out, he did try to resurrect his career. He did play for us, but, you know, it had gone really. And so it's very, very sad. But he was nearly signed for Chelsea before he joined us. Tommy Docherty was interested in him, and he was persuaded that he wasn't the right sort of character. And so he didn't sign him for Chelsea, who were then in the 1st division, the old 1st division. So he never achieved what his magnificent talents deserved, but he was a wonderful player. And, you know, one of the things that saddens me is that I know he's around today. I think he even lives in the Midlands, so he's probably within 30 miles of where I am now. But no one knows where he is. No one knows if he's okay, because I tell you, Luton fans of a certain age would love to see him back there and make a fuss of him. He was an amazing player. Absolutely brilliant.
I mean, again, I've heard of the name, and like you said, I mean, done great things with the ball. And like you said, it's a shame that no one knows where he is, because again, like you're saying, there's people who would know of him and seen him, like you're similar to yourself, who would love to have someone like that in and around the club.
Yeah, the thing is, he did much later play for Southport under an assumed name, which is sort of indicates that he didn't want to be tracked down again. See what I mean? After what happened. So he might not even be called Graham French now. I just don't know. But the memory of that warm September night against Mansfield, a game we won 4-2 in the end, is, you know, still with me really vividly because of that incredible goal. And, you know, people who played with him, including John Moore, as I've said, but others will all say phenomenal ability. What a waste. Pity, really.
For John Moore to say that.
No, he's the first one in my forward line anyway.
Oh, was he the first one you penned, or was he the first name you put down?
No hesitation whatsoever. He was the main man. Absolutely brilliant football. But, you know, we did have some great wingers in our time. Johnny Aston, Jimmy Ryan, you know, they were terrific players in the day. Billy Bingham, one of my first heroes, another survivor of the FA Cup final side of 1959, who, you know, I interviewed many times when I was doing ITV Sport, because he became manager of Northern Ireland. So he's a real hero to me, and he could easily have been in the team, but you just have to bring it down to 11, as you know, and it's very difficult. But Billy Bingham was a terrific player, and as I say, Jimmy Ryan and Johnny Aston. Aston on his day was a magnificent player.
That's who I got. Sorry, I got confused. That's who I was trying to think of when I said John Ryan. And
Jimmy.
Jimmy was at the club. Jimmy managed me, and I played with Jimmy in the reserves. But it was John Ashton I was trying to think of, who I've heard good things. Yeah, great things about.
Right, do you want to go into the middle now?
Let's go into the middle. Yes.
Yeah, in my front four, I've got one winger, which is obviously Graham French. In the middle, and my left winger, also the guy who's going to be left-sided, is also really a number 9. So it's a bit difficult, but I just couldn't leave these people out, right? So the next person, well, he is a very special player, really. He scored 2 goals in the League Cup final in 1988. So, I mean, crikey, you know who I'm talking about immediately. David Pleat said he was the best taker of chances he'd ever seen, I think, the best finisher. He is a wonderfully skillful player. Played, 400 times for us and scored 130 goals in 2 spells. And I remember one day when I was at a Luton game, a first team game, and I was in the sort of, hospitality area afterwards, and Harry Haslam, then manager, came in and was chatting to people like me because I was sort of a press person. And David Pleat was in charge of the reserves, came back from a game he'd been in charge of. And he said, Harry, this guy playing for the reserves is outstanding. He is going to be some player. And he raved about this guy. So I really remember this guy. And who was he, Marv?
Brian Steen.
Brian Steen. My goodness. I saw his debut, for us. Amazingly, it was in the League Cup. It was at Old Trafford against Manchester City, because we played Manchester City in the League Cup and we drew home and away. And so the third game had to be on a neutral venue. And it was at Old Trafford. And that was his debut. And you could see he was a terrific player. He wasn't sort of fully up to speed, and he was easily knocked off the ball. And he was a bit, I don't know, not bulky enough. Do you know what I mean? He hadn't bulked up.
A bit lightweight.
Yeah.
Just while I'm talking to you, my wife has gone out onto our patio with a notice at the window saying, "Can we eat at 7:45?" He's got the dinner on.
What was she doing, Vicky? Did she not know you can't?
Out there in the snow. Oh dear. Anyway, so I remember so much about Brian Steen, obviously, but you can't turn away from the 1988 League Cup final against Arsenal. He was electric that day, and to score the winner with virtually the last kick of the game, I mean, folklore, isn't it? A wonderful day, absolutely magnificent day for a Luton fan or anyone connected. You were there, weren't you? You were on the pitch, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't write that. I mean, again, I played, I think, a couple of games. I think we played Leeds on the way. I mean, on the way to the final. I was very young, and back then they only had 2 subs were on the bench.
Yeah.
And so Ashley Grimes and Mark Steen were the subs on the day, and I was obviously in the squad alongside a couple of the young lads, and Kingsley Black obviously played in the game, which was a little bit was a big surprise to a lot of people and stuff. And
Darren McDonough got injured, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if you listen to Kingsley's podcast here. I mean, it was from probably about a week earlier than, because he had been playing in the team, and he said that Ray had said to him, "Oh, look, I'm going to leave you out." This is the week before, and Kingsley's head's thinking about, well, that means I'm not going to be involved, obviously, in the game next week in the final. So he said it was probably a masterstroke by Ray, because he probably had it in the back of his mind to play Kingsley, but didn't want to get him all too nervous and stuff. And so, he got the man of the match. Kingsley got the man of the match, and poor Arsenal to shreds that day was outstanding. And like I said, it was a massive day for the club, and it was great to be part of the squad and be involved in the build up and everything what went on. Yeah, it was tremendous.
Yeah, absolutely. Greatest sporting day in my life, I think I have to say. I mean, there have been some great days here and there and things I really cherish, but that has to be the very greatest. And alongside him is someone who's also a treasured sort of hero at Luton Town Football Club, and I think was voted the favourite player of all time by Luton Town fans, who played alongside Brian Steen. So I think it's quite easy to guess who this guy is. Go on.
Yes.
Big
Mick
Mick.
Harford.
Big Mick. I mean, it's not just his footballing ability, which was immense, because he's just been so much more, hasn't he? He's been involved with the club so much over the years in a coaching, managerial, assistant managerial, scouting capacity. And he's just an absolute, legend of the club. And I know it's sort of, a bit of a cliche, but he is the legend of all legends, I would say. And he played a couple of times for England. Who knows, if he'd been with another club, whether he'd done better. But he sort of had that sort of charisma, that menace about him, real determination. He posed such a threat in the box, didn't he? Nightmare for people to do against Owen. And he had flair, and he's sort of imperious out there. He was just such a presence. And of course, he was manager at our toughest time, wasn't he, really, when we dropped out of the Football League. I fancy having to manage a club that starts on -30. And he was a great guy for it. He couldn't keep us up. How many would have been able to? I mean, it's just an impossible job. But he's still at the club, and it's wonderful. And he did a brilliant job last season, or 2 seasons ago now, getting us up to the Championship when he took over, as you know, mid-season. He's just an inspirational figure. I absolutely love the man. I wish he'd played more for England. And of course, he won the JP Trophy, didn't he? The Johnson Paint Trophy.
Yeah, he did.
And that was, I mean, for my younger children, that was the greatest day in their lives, because they weren't around when we won, or weren't bothered when we won the League Cup and things like that. So the JPT with 42,000 Luton fans there, and Mick Harford leading us out to win that game. Brilliant. I mean, you've got to take that as a moment in time. You forget the fact that 2 weeks later we dropped out of the Football League. That moment in time was spectacular, wasn't it? Absolutely brilliant day. So yeah, Mick is the most one of the easiest people to pick, as is Brian Steele. They all are for me. But
so of course, around that time, you were just go back. You were talking about the JPT Trophy, and obviously 2020 had taken over about 18 months. I'm getting confused with time and things like that. About 18 months before, and you of course became the kind of the chairman as such of the club and the focal point of the club. How did that come about? Obviously through 2020, because I know you've been in and around the club before then, but to be named as kind of like the chairman as such, how did that come about, and what was it like for you?
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, first of all, it's something I'm so proud of and so honoured by, privilege. I was contacted by one of the original group, a guy called Anthony Brown, who is a great mate of mine, and he said, we're forming a group to try and save the club, and getting local supporters who've got a little bit of money together, to try and, save the club and take it over and be run by Luton Town fans. And he said, we just need a sort of figurehead. Would you be prepared to be the figurehead? Because I don't have any cash. I'm not in the sort of businessman league remotely, And I said, I would love to, but I'm not sure I could, because I'm a newsman at the BBC, and you're not really meant to attach your colours to anything in my job. I mean, I couldn't wear a badge of a charity on air or do anything like that. And at the time, I was presenting the regional TV programme in the Midlands from Birmingham. So if it had been Aston Villa, I couldn't have done it, because we're talking about Aston Villa and Wolves and West Brom and Coventry and Walsall all the time, So I couldn't be known to have a bias. But because it was a team out of the Midlands, the BBC, and it went right to the top, said, yeah, you can do it, but you cannot hire and fire. You can be a figurehead, you can do interviews and do all that sort of stuff, which is sort of what I did, but you can't hire and fire. So I was a non-exec chairman and really a figurehead. And at a time like that, I like to think, it was quite an important job, because it got us lots of publicity, and I did loads of interviews and features and things about my love of Luton Town, and it all promoted Luton Town at a time, a very sad time in the club's history. So I'm very proud to be part of it, proud to be part of the rebirth and the start of our climb back up. But after 9 years or so of doing it, I felt, we're moving into sort of more serious business waters, and it was difficult for me. So I lived 2.5 hours away from the ground. It was difficult to be involved anymore, so I stood down, and my very close friend David Wilkinson took over, which is fantastic as well. But it's something I'm very proud of. I can't believe that this little boy who started watching Luton in short trousers ended up as chairman. I'm very proud of him.
Excellent.
Fantastic. So you say that was kind of one of the proudest moments as a fan, or would you say that's probably one of the proudest moments for you as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, as a fan, I feel very proud reflecting on that. In my overall support of the club, specifically, my proudest moment is 1988, the League Cup final, and the Johnson's Paint, actually. and just sort of being part of the team that helped to see the rebirth of Luton Town. So it is a privilege to have been associated and to written in the programme and put my thoughts down and reflected on everything about the club, because I just love that club and I just think about them all the time. Yeah.
Fantastic. So we'll move on to your last player then. Let's see if we can all guess this. Now I've got a few names in my mind. I'm sure Marv has.
One name.
Basically, I've as well I've got one name in my mind, but we'll see how we go.
Don't forget, square pegs, round holes. Just remember that. This bloke is not a left wing, but he's got a left foot. He's got a phenomenal left, and he's got an ability to bend if necessary, because he started as a fullback. Yeah, he is a striker who'd got
the fullback things confuse me.
Oh
no,
he was a fullback at Fulham.
Yeah,
when we signed him, and Alex Stock, I think it was Alex Stock, said, "I'm going to put you up front, see how you get on," because he had terrific pace and he was a revelation.
He hasn't got it.
And he scored 49 goals for us in 88 appearances. 49 in 88, phenomenal. And he played for England, and in one England game, he scored all 5 England goals in one game in a European qualifier. And he's also part of the most exciting game I ever watched. So who is it, Andrew?
I assume it's Malcolm McDonald.
Yes.
Right, right, good. I'm glad I never knew he started as a fullback. I never knew that. Wow.
Yeah, he turned him into a striker.
So I'm not an awful Luton fan. I do know Malcolm McDonald, by the way. I just didn't. I didn't know he started as a fullback.
Yeah. So this is an unbelievable forward line, really. And if they get the ball enough, they'll score a lot of goals. But yeah, he was a brilliant player and so he had thrilling pace. And one particular game I remember when we had been promoted from Division 3 into Division 2, and we were about to play Sheffield Wednesday, who were just been relegated from Division 1. So it's a big game for us. You know, we're sort of in the big time again. You know, our last game in the previous division was Mansfield away. We drew it 0-0 to win promotion. And now we are into the, you know, what is now the Championship, and we're playing a team that had just dropped down from what is now the Premier League. Sheffield Wednesday away. I was working in Yorkshire at the time, so it was just down the road for me. And I went to this game full of trepidation, and we beat them 5-1 at Hillsborough. Unbelievable game. This is October 1970. And Malcolm McDonald and Don Givens, who is another very much a favourite player of mine and a close friend, I see him a lot these days socially, he's a big buddy. They absolutely ripped them apart. And it was unbelievable. And Sheffield Wednesday fans who were fed up enough because they were in a lower division, having just been relegated, were throwing their cushions on the pitch and everything on the pitch. It was almost a riot. And we were superb that day. So that particular game is my most exciting game as a Luton fan, just because we were so supreme in that sense. But Malcolm McDonald himself was a very, very exciting player for us over a couple of years, scored bags full of goals, goal after goal after goal. And he had the longest throw. He could throw right onto the centre, the penalty spot, you know, this throw-in. That was a really dangerous weapon at times. Sadly, you know, we couldn't hold on to him. Newcastle coveted him for a long time. And in the end, they bought him for 180,000, which was a lot of money. And shattered to see him go. And on his debut for Newcastle against Liverpool at St James's Park, he scored a hat-trick against mighty Liverpool, and they won 3-1, 3-2 or something like that. Malcolm McDonald was immediately a god on Tyneside, and he's still a god on Tyneside, still living. Last time we were up there in the FA Cup, I met up with him for a drink before the game and things like that. Legend. All this lot of legends. And
fantastic.
You know, he's left-sided, so he could probably get away with playing on the left side with Harford and Steen in the middle and Graham French on the other side. He played with Graham French, incidentally, and he will tell you that Graham French was an unbelievable player, even though Graham would sometimes turn up for training having not been to bed all night, and with his whippets, which he liked to walk around the training ground.
Well, I mean, not a lot of people would, I mean, the younger people would know that Malcolm McDonald played for Luton. I mean, growing up, when I'm watching, I'm seeing Arsenal, Arsenal. I've seen it, and it wasn't until I joined Luton and I'm thinking, Malcolm McDonald, did he? Is that the same? Malcolm? Is that the same Malcolm? And I thought, wow, unbelievable.
Yeah. Oh, he's a spectacular player. So that's my team, and amongst the subs would be Les Seeley, Don Gibbons, Kirk Stevens, Mal Donaghy, David Priest, Paul Walsh, what a player, Johnny Aston, Don Ryan, Alan West, fabulous player, Brian Horton, Steve Howard, Andre Gray. I mean, he only played for us in the conference, but he's played in the Premiership since, and Premier League since, and he's an absolute sensational pace. Gordon Turner scored 276 goals for us. I saw him play, but not enough to put him in my team, but he's clearly a very special player. And Bob Morton, I mean, record appearances for us, about 500 appearances for Luton Town. I met his widow not that long ago. And Marvin Johnson, of course.
That's going to be one of my first questions, Nick. I mean, and I'm very thick-skinned, I am. So listen, be totally honest. So when this boy Johnson first came into the team, and you was obviously seen the first time that I played, what was your thoughts?
Oh, loved watching you. You were very athletic, very quick, very determined, good in the tackle. Sometimes when you cleared the ball, I thought it's like you were kicking a threatening bit because it went. But no, you're a terrific player, and I loved it when you occasionally burst through from defence, didn't you, to have a crack?
Yes.
No, I mean, you're a legend, Marvin, because you were there at the club for so long, and you were captain and so on. And people absolutely love you in so many ways because of everything about you. Your whole personality, your whole charisma, the whole presence.
Thank you, Nick. There's some nice words there. I mean, again, it's not until you have a career and you look back, and I realized how fortunate I was to play in the top division. And at the time when you're going up, and it was the first division back then, and obviously it's the English Premier League now. Back then, all I knew was Luton in the top division. So playing against the Arsenal, the Chelseas, the Man United, it was just the norm for me. And then I look back now, look, my gosh, I mean, if Luton played now, Man United or Chelsea, or they're looking to swap shirts. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I'm sure they would have swapped shirts and all stuff like that.
I hope, Marvin, that tells you what a good player you must have been to be playing in that sort of company.
Yes, I mean yes.
Some of the players I've picked today only played for us in the 4th division or the 3rd division or the lower divisions. You played in the top flight. So it's just remember that to yourself, that you played in the absolute supreme company in one of the best, if not the best, leagues in the world.
True.
Can never take that away.
No, that's true.
No, you're right. You're right. So who Nick, would you pick to lead this band of merry men? Who would be your best manager you've ever seen sit in a dugout for Luton?
Yeah. Right. Well, one candidate who isn't my final choice. My missus is looking at the window again. One candidate would be John Still because of what he achieved in turning the club around. He changed the whole psyche, the whole atmosphere, the whole feeling at the club. It was evil somehow. There was a lot of bad feeling at the club. It was toxic, that's the word, toxic. And he turned that round and made it a happy club where we all pulled together. So that was very important, very, very important. And he got us out of the conference. But the manager has to be the guy, for me, the guy who got us into the top flight and kept us there for a best part of a decade and created the team that won the League Cup. He wasn't manager at the time, but he created it mostly. And is still synonymous with Luton Town Football Club. A lovely man who I spoke to only last week. He played for us. I saw him play for us as a youngster. He broke his leg and could have done a lot better. Who knows? Because he was a very, very good winger. And who do you think that is?
David Pleat.
Correct. Without question. Outstanding. Absolutely outstanding.
So, which time do you remember better, the first or second time round? I mean, he came back again as well.
Well, for David,
it's only twice.
The first time, when he stopped us getting relegated from Division 2, and then ultimately won Division 2 and got us into Division 1, and then kept us there and created a lovely team. Bought some terrific players, like Steve Foster, like Mick Harper, like Paul Nicholas, like Mal Donaghy. Loads of really good players he brought in. All credit to Paul Walsh. Brought steam through, fantastic.
Fantastic. And of course, you also would have spent a lot of time with David Pleat. You said you spoke to him last week. What's his memories of the club? What does he still? I know he still commentates on TV quite a bit. Even in Australia, I still hear his commentary.
Do you?
Over here, when he still does Champions League quite a bit and things like that. So I know he's got a bit of fondness for Tottenham as well.
Yeah. Luton is his club, really. He lives in Luton, as you probably know, and he goes to games occasionally. He went to a game only a couple of weeks ago, and so that is his first love without question. He's a really nice man, really sensitive man, a really thinking man, and he was sort of ahead of his time, I think, in many ways.
Yeah.
The way he played the game. I'm not an expert on that sort of thing, so I can't really talk about it, but he always felt like that. And I'll never forget one time when I ended up sitting next to him in the main stand on the night of the riots against Millwall. Horrible night, if you remember, 1985, 6-round FA Cup. And we beat them 1-0, and Millwall fans went bonkers and ripped the seats up and set fire to things. I think David probably was sitting in the stand as manager because he wanted to get away from the trouble. I was sitting next to him. I was doing breakfast telly at the time. And I was chatting to him, and he was really distressed about what had happened. And I said, well, on the bright side, we are in the semi-final of the FA Cup. Try and hold that thought as well, David. He said, yeah, but this is just so awful. And I said, well, good night. And I said good night to him, and that was it. The next morning, I was on duty on TV-am, the breakfast TV sofa, and I got to the studio about 3:45 as usual. And what did I find? Top story of the day was the riots at Luton. Who was my main guest? I was interviewing live on the sofa at 8 o'clock. David Pleat. So that means said goodnight to him at 10:30 the night before. I was back with him at 8 o'clock in the morning. Amazing. Dear old David.
Oh, fantastic man. Fantastic man. Marv, always your question. Last question.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of us know it anyway. Well, maybe not. Well, you have mentioned it. Your most favourite and memorable game, Luton, ever for you?
Oh,
One
so
game.
many.
One game.
I think I mentioned the Sheffield Wednesday win 5-1 away, but I think because of the great goal that was scored, it has to be that Mansfield night.
Really?
Mansfield.
Oh, I thought that was on for the Littlewoods Cup final. I thought because you spoke quite passionate about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, as well. I mean, what do you say? That was spectacular. But I can't pick one. Yeah, the League Cup finals. Yeah, the League Cup finals.
He's sitting on the fence.
He's sitting on the fence. I'm gonna go, come on, you can't be. You're not a politician.
You got to pick one. Everybody has picked one game.
All right. It's got to be the League Cup final because it's the moment we won a major trophy. So yeah, let's go for it.
The major
League
trophy.
Cup.
Yeah,
and if you could just, so where were you sat for that game? Were you with the executives or were you sat in with the fans?
Family and friends.
Yes.
In the main stand.
Which made it more special.
Row of 10 of us. Yeah.
Did that make it more special? Obviously, for the JPT,
Yes.
you were up in the other boxes area.
Yeah, I was. Yeah. No, it was. There's so many brilliant memories, but I suppose, yeah, you're right. The League Cup final has to be it, and it was lovely being with the family and seeing the emotions, especially kids.
Nick, we appreciate you giving up your time, and tell Vicky that we hope she's not burnt the dinner, and we know it was close. It was close, but like, listen.
Coming. Yeah.
So,
Great to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Nick. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nick Owen. And that was Nick Owen's My Best 11. Thanks, Nick.